Good Monday morning, everyone. So what a great weekend we just had. In my homily this weekend, I talked about my simple notion of heaven. It's when we're in this perfect, loving union with God. It doesn't matter when we come into that perfect, loving union. We're always constantly trying to move towards it. Heaven is when we're in that perfect, loving union with God. It goes along with our gospel, right? Where Jesus told the parable about the workers out in the vineyard, all started at different times during the day, put in different hours of work, but they all got paid the same. Doesn't matter when we convert, when we turn over to God, what we've done in the past. We're all looking for that same reward, that reward that's in heaven. And conversely, then, if we're working in the fields, if we're working, trying to develop that loving relationship with God, we can't sit there and say, okay, I've done enough. I'm leaving the field. I'm leaving that and I'm going on to something else. We've always got to be constantly developing that loving relationship with God. And the good news is we're always seeking happiness. And the way to find happiness is through that loving relationship with God, through loving God and loving our neighbor. And Jesus gave us the Beatitudes, right? Telling us how we can be happy. And they're countercultural, right? It doesn't seem like someone who's poor or someone who's meek can be happy. But what Jesus is saying is, look, don't worry about your possessions. Don't worry about how much power you've got. Don't worry about those things. Just concentrate on loving. And loving is wanting what's best for the other person. Not necessarily what's best for us, but what's best for the other person. And that's what we can do to make us happy. We all know that, right? And that becomes part of our conscience. Our conscience is that part of us that keeps trying to steer us to the good. But sometimes we don't do the good. Sometimes we turn away and we reject the good. But we've always got to be trying to form our conscience. We've got to be doing an examination of conscience. We've got to be trying to recognize where it is that we've gone off path. Where are we not continuing to love God in the way we should, love one another in the way we should. At Mass, we passed out an examination of conscience based off of St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, where he talks about love being kind and patient and all. And I encourage everyone to do an examination of conscience, to look at where they are and look at what it is that God is asking them to do. We all need to continue to form our conscience. And that's what this year in faith formation is really all about. It's forming that conscience, listening to what Christian morality is all about. What are those things that we should be doing? What are those things that we shouldn't be doing? Hey, if you want some good information on what the Catechism says about forming our moral conscience, I encourage you to listen to Father Mark Schmidt's Catechism in a Year. He started back in August, the third part of the Catechism, the part on Christian morality. And so here in this email down below, we'll have a link to where it begins there and the day that he starts talking about the third part. I encourage you to, if you haven't been listening to his Catechism in a Year, to at least listen to those parts on the moral life, to as we go through this year, kind of keep up and listen to his different reflections that correspond to what we've been talking about. You may hear some of the same points that I made in my homily this weekend. Got to confess, I listened to them as we prepared from the homily and prepared for what we're talking about. It's a good other source that you can use in learning about the Christian moral life. Well, I hope you have a good week, and we'll talk to you again on Friday. All right. Goodbye, everyone.